The House of Representatives are a significant minority right now, and we don't have the White House, we don't have the Senate. So I think my work tonight is to lay out the agenda of what we can accomplish if we take the majority back. You know, I work very closely, my staff does too, with Republicans. I have 70 Republican members of the House I consider genuine friends. But if you let me do a third term, I am deeply hopeful that we can take back the U.S. House and really take a different direction as a nation. These policies are many, many, but let me just mention three. First, when I first ran, and ever since, I promised to be the strongest, clearest voice I could be to fight climate change. And I've led the fight against, I thought, very ill-considered EPA policies on the environment, clean air, clean water, and the like. I worked very hard to fight bigotry. I'm the lead sponsor of the Religious Freedom Act, which says no one will be denied admission to the United States because of their religious beliefs. And the entire Democratic caucus, including me, has worked very hard to preserve the Affordable Care Act. And finally, we need to shape a new American economy. Immigration reform, women's economic empowerment, an increase in the minimum wage, paid family leave, and infrastructure investment. My background is lieutenant governor, ambassador, car dealer, father, all put together to try to be your best representative. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Mr. O.
Thank you, everyone, for having me and taking time out of your busy lives to come. It truly means a lot. My name is Thomas O. I'm a veteran, public servant, and hard-working Korean American. I led our troops abroad, America's sons and daughters, who volunteered to make the ultimate sacrifice. I worked as a mover and struggled to pay bills. I know when to stand up and when to not back down for what's right. I also know when to, and I'm willing to work with people to achieve common sense solutions. I don't come from a rich, powerful, or well-connected family. My family immigrated from Korea, which used to be a war-torn country. My father taught me to fight harder than everyone else in order to succeed as a minority chasing the American dream. That's how I became an Army Airborne Ranger. That's how I learned to never quit. And that's why I will fight harder than any other congressman to represent you. I never planned on running for the United States Congress. However, after years and years of having the same lack of representation, we must see who these career politicians have been working for. I served our country abroad to uphold the Constitution, protect Americans, and to keep our country safe. Yet, back here at home, life gets more expensive by the day, adding to struggles the same working class that I come from. Healthcare hasn't become affordable. Homes are definitely not affordable. Rent gets higher every year, and at the same time, our nation gets further into debt. We're almost at $22 trillion of debt right now. Corporations and lobbyists continue to buy our politicians who are already among the elite. It's obvious that there's a problem in American politics. The career politicians do not work for us. We deserve a leader to represent us. We need to elect a Congress that works for everyday Americans, not their political parties, personal ego, lobbyists, or big corporations. I'm running to change Congress, and we will change Congress together.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That's great. We will again have a question.
What is your position on keeping families together?
Let's start with Mr. O on this one, and we'll alternate.
I definitely do not believe that children should ever be separated from their parents or their families unless the child's safety is at risk. Now, my family, once again, immigrated from Korea to seek liberties, opportunities, and freedom. I like to see the same opportunities be given to today's immigrants. I think we need to actually expand legal immigration. If people are coming to our country and we have a shortage of labor in certain workforce, like we saw with the blue crab industry, let's hurry up and bring them in. It shouldn't take 2-6 months for a visa to process through. We need to speed it up to get our economy going and actually have jobs. But then again, I also understand the concept of rule of law. My stepmom, for example, when she got remarried, she wasn't able to travel to Korea because, the travel restrictions during her green card process. And, for people who come here, on the right terms, by following the rules, it's not fair. But rather than closing the doors, being ethnocentric, or shutting doors, we should help people. America is a beacon of hope. That's why this country is so great. As long as you try your best, it doesn't matter how much you come to this country with what money, you can achieve the American dream, or at least still try to. I'm trying to make sure the American dream still exists, not just for Americans, but for our immigrants.
with Thomas that separating children is an absolutely horrible thing. I think we will look back on this phase of history with extraordinary embarrassment compared to the Japanese internment or some of the earlier Supreme Court decisions. I was perhaps the first member of Congress to hit an airport after the Muslim ban when the first couple of weeks of Trump's office, working very closely with CARE and others on the many people who were denied admission to the United States. With the recent family separation, I again looked hard to find fathers and mothers who'd been separated from their kids and spent a whole afternoon with it, two dads up in a jail in Glenburn, Maryland. And then a few days later went out to Youth for Tomorrow, the youth home that Joe Gibbs started. I was chairman of the board for a number of years and snuck in the back way to talk to 60 kids, girls and boys who've been separated from their mothers and fathers, and hearing their stories through translators. I've been deeply involved in all the immigration reform, and with due respect to Thomas, the challenge is that we've been unable to pass bipartisan immigration reform in the U.S. Congress. We have Stephen Miller from the White House who's driving immigration policy. The president's policies are absolutely opposite of American values, and unfortunately, the political leaders in charge right now, the Paul Ryan's, Kevin McCarthy's, will not allow common sense immigration votes to go forward. With due respect to Thomas, we need to get leadership in Congress, including Republicans. There are a couple like Will Hurd from Texas who want to do the right thing. But so far we've made no progress whatsoever, which is one reason it's so important that we flip Congress and get comprehensive immigration reform in the first half of 2019.
What seems to be happening right now is that the tax burden is being shifted to the local level increasingly. So we're finding that from everything from social services, transportation funding, all of those things that we used to rely in some part on federal and state dollars increasingly falling to the localities. And meanwhile, on the federal level, it's not as though it has achieved any reduction in the federal deficit. So for the question for both of you is, what can you do to help make sure that we can still meet the needs and services that we need to provide at all three levels of government, local, state, and federal, with a fair tax allocation system?
Great. Well, Eric, thank you very much. You clearly come at it from an informed perspective right now. Let me give you the short answer and the big answer. The short answer is we can do something very constructive about infrastructure funding in the next Congress. I actually was hopeful that when both Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton pledged to do infrastructure funding, that we would actually get something done. We've got nothing done. The Trump infrastructure plan was a complete house of cards. It basically was flipping it so that local governments would spend 80% rather than 20%. We need a new, stable, long-term revenue source. It could be a carbon tax, it could be a financial services tax, it could be something, because we've not raised the gas tax since 92, 93. It's been whittled away by inflation. We're now, according to the Society of American Engineers, $4 trillion behind in infrastructure investment. One of the things I'm very proud of is with Mark Warner and Tim Kaine, we got the $250 million for Arlington Memorial Bridge, but that's just a drop in the bucket. On the larger scale, Thomas mentioned the $22 trillion in federal deficit, which is absolutely right. But once again, there's not been the political will to address Social Security reform and Medicare and Medicaid, which is 75% of the federal budget. You can't balance the budget on discretionary spending alone. It's impossible. What you do instead is take money away from local governments. And there are very good initiatives out there, bipartisan, to fix Social Security through 2100. That will lead to a sponsor on it. But again, we have to have the leadership that allows us to vote on the floor to make these happen.
Thank you. Mr. O.
Now, I want everyone here to ask themselves, within the last 4 years, since Beyer's been in office, has your taxes gone up locally? He had his chance to make a difference. You know, for example, the meals tax just got passed in Alexandria City. I know there's a meals tax here in Arlington. It was very unpopular. Most people don't even know about it. When I tell them, hey, you know about the meals tax? They're like, what? And they look at their receipt and they're surprised. Now, if you want to stop these tax rates going up with local leaders, you know, as a congressman, my expectation of you is to reach out to these local leaders, mentor them, coach them, not take money from people like Justin Wilson, who voted in support of the meals tax. How does that make any sense? That makes no sense to me. And as far as tax system, I'd like to see a bill, and I would like to introduce a bill where we can have a tax system based on the market rate. For example, 100K in the DC area doesn't really seem like 100K. It's more like you're making about 70,000 in Atlanta, Georgia. So why are you paying tax at a 100K rate when you're really making about 60,000 the market rate? We need to make sure that taxes are low so that people can grow. Many people have this misconception that lowering taxes only helps the big, rich corporations and the wealthy. But what about the middle class? What about the poor? We can't. 5% to us means a lot. People like that means the paycheck to paycheck. Taxes, whatever it's 50%, 30%, 60%, it means nothing for the wealthy because they can actually afford it. Now, for the working class Americans like myself, we need to make sure taxes are lower and assessments are actually fair on property.
Okay, thank you very much. I will repeat that anyone who doesn't get an opportunity to ask a question tonight, please email me at lois@civfed.com. This will be our last question for this panel.
Herschel Cantor, Williamsburg Civic Association. As the president might say, some people think that democracy is threatened, in fact, by the president. And I wonder if the two of you would comment on that and what you might do in Congress about it.
Mr. O, you start on this one.
As your next congressman, I promise one thing. Always put people before politics. I will always take the time to read a bill. I don't care if it has an R next to it or a D next to it. I want to do what's best for people of this district. Look at Don Beyer's voting record. It's all there on public. See how hyper-partisan he's voting. And as far as ensuring democracy, we need to make sure that everyone here has the ability to vote. We need to do voter outreach. People are educated. We need to incorporate new technology, such as blockchain technology, to secure the integrity of our election system. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Herschel, thank you for the question. My wife wakes me at 3 every morning to talk about the democracy being threatened, so I know it very well. But first, I think Thomas criticized my record very briefly about taxes. I think the most important tax vote I took in the last 4 years was voting against the Republican tax bill, which was a terrible piece of legislation, the largest legislative deficit in American history. We're now finding that 83 to 87% of it is going back to the wealthiest corporations and being spent on dividends or corporate, buying back stock. Exactly the opposite we want. And virtually none of it is going to the American worker. We have 30 years of stagnation in American worker stuff. And if you just look specifically at Arlington and Alexandria, the SALT provision to make the non-deductibility of your local taxes non-deductible is to make a tax increase for virtually every middle-class person in Arlington and Alexandria Fairfax. By the way, I never weighed in the meals tax. For a local person like John or Eric, it's the choice of real estate tax or meals tax. On the 1 minute, this president, I confess, I wanted him to be a good president. I didn't vote for him. He's a disaster. There's not a single thing that Donald Trump has done in terms of his character, his personality, the way he treats people, that I would want my children or my grandchildren to emulate. If we take back the House, we will see his tax returns in January of 2019. We will be able to provide oversight for the first time on the EPA and Interior and IRS and all these other places. We will be able to, by the way, a lot of people are pushing for impeachment. I don't believe impeachment should ever be partisan. The only way we'd ever impeach Donald Trump is if there is a significant number of Republicans, based on what comes out about Russia and Mueller investigations, want to do that. But we're not going to do a Democratic impeachment of a Republican president because we don't want a Republican impeachment of a Democratic president. It has to be done together. But I think we will be fighting for the kind of leadership that we really want to see in America.
Well, I thank you both, gentlemen, for an edifying evening. And with that, we are all out of time. And I officially bring to close the 2018 Forum. This does not conclude our meeting, as Nicole previewed earlier. And I offer my most sincere thanks.
Excuse me, don't we get a closing statement? 3 minutes.
Gosh.
Thank you.
Please forgive me. Yes, absolutely. We need some closing statements. 2 of them, preferably.
Lois, you're supposed to cut this off after I do my
Well, Mr. Beyer, you're first, so there's a good chance.
Thank you again, the Arlington Civic Federation, for hosting this event. And Thomas, thank you for being an active part of this democracy. I very much respect your willingness, not just your service in the military, but your willingness to be part of our never-ending quest to form a more perfect union. People sometimes say that all politics is local, and under ordinary time, there's a lot of truth in that. But our country, and this is true in every single congressional district, is facing really extraordinary challenges. I don't think there's a person in this room, including the supporters of Thomas, who would say they're satisfied with the present leadership of our nation, that it represents our best values or who we want to be. One of my deeply held beliefs is that history has a direction, a forward positive direction, but it's not always linear. There's good times, there are bad times. But we're at a crossroads in a democracy, and I've been part of campaigns in the American Democratic life for decades and decades, and this is the most anxious I've ever seen people. We have town hall meetings that are 600, 800 people. But I've also never seen the electorate more engaged. And everywhere I go, people are filling the rooms, and they're stepping up, raising their hands, rolling up their sleeves, trying to define this nation. And it is you that will change the current course of history, turn it in a positive direction. On environmental protections before it's too late, on health care, on civil rights, on responsible business practices, on consumer protection, and especially on leadership on the world stage. Let's make America, America again. It's easy to be discouraged with the present state of our country, but we pulled ourselves together before. I remember my wife, our parents did in World War II. Young people in Florida are doing it right now against hatred and against gun violence. And in Virginia, we did it last year at the polls, putting a record number of women and people of color in state legislature. And that's why I'd like to close tonight, not just asking for your vote. I love your vote. But asking for your full-fledged participation in this big, big moment that's happening in just 9 short weeks. If you feel that what's happening in our country is important and what happens in Arlington, everything you do really, really makes a difference. So let's take our democracy, make it as strong as we possibly can. We can make it bipartisan. We'll work together with a lot of things, but let's make sure we're moving in the right direction with respect, with tolerance, with a great appreciation of what America can be. Thank you. Please vote for it.
Thank you. Shall we have another closing statement? I'm going to get fired.
Well, we all know that Northern Virginia is a very well-educated area, so it's not hard to ignore these facts. Does someone who voted to shut down the federal government has less than 6% of his money come from individual small contributors and has taken millions of dirty corporate money over his political career represent you? Is someone who voted against the Department of Veteran Affairs Accountability and Whistleblower Protection Act and even voted against the VA Accountability Act against efforts to help our veterans? Does that individual not care about what it means to serve or those that served? Would you say someone who doesn't even show up for a charity forum for local veterans is ignoring our veterans? What are your thoughts on someone who says they care about the environment, talks about climate change, but they refuse to sign the pledge alongside Activate Virginia, which is an all-Democrat and green organization, until I was the first Republican to join? How about someone who also refused to sign the No Fossil Fuel Money pledge and has taken over $20,000 this election cycle alone from Dominion Energy? Do Northern Virginians want someone who voted against strengthening oversight of brands' access to Finance Act? Does that someone represent transparency? What would you say about someone who has a career in the automobile industry that sits in Congress who voted against the joint resolution regarding indirect auto lending and compliance with Equal Credit Opportunity Act and has taken $59,000 from the automobile industry this election cycle? If someone believes in transparency, why would they vote against the Federal Oversight Reform and Modernization Act against the Federal Reserve? Is it because they accepted $2,000 from Goldman Sachs PAC, or maybe $5,500 from TD Bank PAC and many other banks? Can you believe someone in this room voted against the effort that allows states and victims to fight online sex trafficking? Voted against control of Unlawful Fugitive Felons Act in 2017, and even voted against the Dim Blue Line Act to help our law enforcement and police. How will you hold someone accountable who votes against efforts to stop human sex trafficking and isn't protecting our communities and is weak against crime? Northern Virginia needs someone with common sense, someone who is strong enough to resist money, and someone stand up against the political divide in Congress. We need to stop going further into debt, lower the cost of healthcare, and find ways to improve our daily commute. We need a champion who will represent us and not care about politics or money. I ask for your vote on November 6th so that we can finally put people before politics. Please visit my website to learn more and to support my campaign at www.letschangecongress.org. Thank you so much.